everyone, and welcome to the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence. I'm your host, Sarah Payne, a health marketing strategist at Umbrella Communications, and I'm bringing you fascinating conversations with some of the industry's top marketing minds. On today's episode, we're going to get marketing insights from a venture capital perspective. As VCs look to get top dollar for their investments, what marketing strategies do they see being most effective in driving growth? This conversation is sure to offer incredibly valuable insights, whether you're a startup organization or an established brand with high growth expectations. Joining me on the show is Jasmine Kim, who heads up Care at Home at Samsung Digital Health. She's also an LP advisor for DigiTX Partners and an entrepreneur in residence for Digital DX Ventures. She's an experienced growth and marketing executive who specializes in accelerating growth for companies that sit at the intersection of health and digital technology. She's a board advisor. She's held CMO roles. She has an impressive track record of building and scaling marketing and brand building programs that have delivered 10 to 30% growth in less than 3 years. Jasmine is someone who has always been led by human-centered design and engagement. She is deeply focused on how we create meaningful innovation in healthcare to improve people's healthcare journey. I'm thrilled to have you with me in the studio today, Jasmine. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Jasmine, you're an investor with a marketing background, and I think it's fair to say that you're somewhat of a rare breed in the industry, but I'm hopeful we'll see more and more marketing experts sitting on the boards of companies in the future. Are you seeing evidence that will happen?
Yes, I actually am thinking that I'm becoming less rare. I'm joining a larger tribe of people, of like-minded people. And I think that as marketers have become more revenue drivers and not as a supporting function, and the fact that a lot of marketers that I'm meeting now, we've all had P&L responsibilities and being more of a GM role, revenue driving marketers, I think that many companies, small and large, from public to privately held companies, are looking for people who are really know how to engage with the end consumer, whether it be a B2C or B2B2C. So I think that I'm seeing more of them, and I'm really hopeful, and it's tickled me pink to join a larger community of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm thrilled to hear you say that you're less and less of a rare breed, because I'm very hopeful as well. I think it's good. I think it's going to be great for organizations. I think it's going to be great for growth. I think this is exactly the sort of shift that we need to see in terms of leadership sitting on boards. In our last conversation, Jasmine, you told me that when you made the transition from being a marketing leader to becoming a VC advisor and board member, you went on a listening tour. And you talked to other board members and CEOs, and you asked them what they were missing. Share with us what they told you.
Yeah, and I think that oftentimes one thing that I think that we need to do more of, and I'm hoping that that'll come to pass, especially in such a world where every soundbite and the person who's the loudest gets the kind of the last word, that I feel like I always try to go on a listening tour. And even prior to kind of going on my journey as wanting to be on the boards, I went to mentors and sponsors and people I'd kind of admire. And one of the really key things that we talked about was a couple of things. One is that a lot of people were looking for more innovative thinking board members. And traditionally, you think about finance and audit and governance. And I think that one of the biggest weaknesses some of the companies have is you have a great product or great service, and how do we actually engage with the outside market? So the whole notion that we built it and they'll come, that's been kind of over for 15, 20 years. And so I think that if you position your role, not so much, I think that people still have maybe some traditional thinking of like traditional marketers don't belong on the board, or they're not traditionally. But if you really position yourself as that you are go-to market engagement person, or creating market access or market development, and I think that is a different framing of the word. Second, what I also heard is that anybody who could help you go from an adjacent industry, and I think that people who market or create new market access are always looking to, once you have one kind of P&L line, how do we diversify and add on new businesses and services? So anybody who's done innovative thinking about creating a marketplace and going into an adjacent category or sector is really helpful. And I think third is that I know that it sounds really trite in 2024, but there's still a lot of companies who are looking to how do we actually go fully digital. And now I would say fully AI. And so I would think that people who have been on the marketing front have really toyed with and played with all kinds of AI tools. And so I think that even 3-4 years ago, it was really about how do we fully go digital. And I think that COVID has really blew that door wide open. But then also, how do we find people who could actually help you do integrated full journey marketing, which is both online and offline? It's not like Sarah, the end user, thinks only digital or only offline or only with AI. And then I think that in the last year or two, really the blowing wide open, how do we use AI in product service, in back of the office, in front of the office, and how we engage with the market? Those are 3 areas that are really compelling for boards and companies to add. And if you have that expertise, and I think that people who come from marketing background have always kind of, at least the people that I know have been in marketing, have always kind of been on the forefront. So I think if you could frame that and package that set of tools or set of kind of your bag of tricks, that is actually something that a lot of companies need and a lot of boards are needing. So I think that that's how you frame how you might be on boards, or how somebody who's a marketer could serve on boards and really contribute in a really impactful way.
I love that. And really smart of you to go on this listening tour to begin with, right? And really sort of listen and hear what it is that the gaps are and what their needs are. And I love this framing around, it probably is those people with that sort of marketing background that are willing to do some of this work that may be missing on some of the boards. And the thing that strikes me about that, Jasmine, is that going all in on digital, going all in or not, but adopting that, right, from an integrated perspective, as you talked about digital or AI, you have to inherently be willing to take on some risk with that and to sort of jump in and try new things and make mistakes and learn from them, and sort of that sort of fail fast sort of mentality. And do you think that that's additionally something that marketing leaders many marketing leaders inherently have based on having to adopt digital marketing into their programs over the last few years?
Yes, I actually think that is one, probably a constancy, at least in my career and kind of from my perspective, is that in how to engage with the user, we've gone through 20 years of unprecedented change in how a consumer wants to consume information and data and products and services. So even if you look back and it seems like, if you think about how, I'm going to say she might have been on TV or print, and then it's online and social media and marketplaces and chats and now TikTok and YouTube, every different way in which we consume information. I think that if you're a really good chief customer engagement person, you're going to be where she is where she is at. And I think that we often say things like, well, let's meet the customers where they are. And I think that we should really double click on that and really unpack how she is looking at her 24/7, her day. Like typically one of the things that we said at Sutter, when I was at Sutter Health, is that even 10 years ago, people used to make a decision on like choosing a health service by 2 contact points. You might have seen them walking down in your neighborhood, that you saw a clinic, you saw a healthcare brand that you want to talk about, what you want to go consider. Or second, maybe your mother or somebody in your milieu recommended, so-and-so doctor or so-and-so clinic. Now, 15 years later, the data shows that it's average, 15 to 20 interactions. That Sarah, maybe in the morning, you as the consumer, Sarah, maybe I heard it on the podcast. Maybe I heard it on the radio. Maybe my neighbor mentioned it. Maybe I saw it on a billboard. Maybe I saw it in my TikTok. Maybe I heard it in a magazine article. And I think that all of those points of contact is going to make her consider or be aware of what you are doing, and then to really consider, and that's how much we need to cut through her reality so that she could actually really, really consider the consumption or the purchase of whatever the thing that you're trying to do. So I think it's it's paramount that we know where that person is and how to engage and how do you actually look at any new media or any new kind of technology that she is using to gather information, to make decisions about her life.
Yeah, and the other thing that strikes me about what you just said is that I think sometimes in marketing, we focus too much on middle of funnel or bottom of funnel. We focus on the conversion point. But what you're talking about is needing to have all of these touch points and exposure of your brand, really emphasizing the need on top of funnel strategies, right? Being in the right places, being, out there as a brand, to have that opportunity to have multiple touch points. Maybe even before someone's even, quote, looking to make a purchase, whatever kind of purchase that is, whether that's engaging in care or it's actually, buying a product. So I think that really underscores the importance on top of funnel strategies as well.
Yeah. And I think that also, I know that with marketing becoming so mathematical that everybody looks at, well, let's do multivariate testing, which is now, you can find what are some top of the funnel or middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel that works with a certain kind of a category or cohort, right? But you need to constantly mix it up because you don't want to take your most loyal users for granted either. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, sometimes that your most loyal customers or users need to actually know something that's a really meta point about who you are. And then also at the bottom of the funnel. So I think that you have to have that constant mix. And I think that the reason I like to still think that I hope that marketing or go-to-market or engagement is art and science. We're human beings after all, and we're incredibly emotional. So yes, we have gotten lots of mathematical, analytical tools, and I use them all the time. But at the end of the day, I think that anybody's read Daniel Kahneman, who he's just passed away, the famous, economist, actually psychologist, we make a lot of decisions on quote, gut instinct.
Yes.
Right? So it's rational. Human beings are not that rational. So sometimes I think that it's not then correct to always try to use only rational thinking mathematical models. And mathematical models, in the day, we've actually set up those models and human beings set them up. So inherently, there are human biases built into every one of those.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's great advice. Let's talk about the value of marketing from an investor perspective. I think the $1 million question most marketing leaders want to know is, do boards of directors believe in the value of marketing to support growth? What are your thoughts on that, Jasmine?
I believe, and just by the discussions I've had in the past couple of years, that I think it is now paramount. We have because of the cost of creating products or services have become democratized, that I think it's really how do you actually take it to market and how to land the thing, right? So I think people call it different things now. People don't necessarily call it, they'll oftentimes say go to market or market access and healthcare and biotech and medical devices. But I think end of the day, or patient marketing, or they'll say doctors marketing, or it's very specific channel, right? But end of the day, we're all humans. And we need to actually cut through the clutter to make sure that you understand what the product is, how it actually serves you. How do you get it? How do you use it? And what's the pricing point? So I think it's really important. And I also know that oftentimes, like when you look at a lot of the digital health apps that have been sold through the past 6-7 years to employers, well, they're finding out that the first phase is done, but nobody uses it at the other end. Because nobody thought about the fact that maybe the employer benefits people don't know how to market it to the actual employees who are consumers. And the consumers are not just hearing from their employers, they're hearing from other people. So you need to create all those touch points, right? So I think that that's the traction. And what we found out, and I think it still holds true, that Price Waterhouse, they did extensive, incredible research, that people expect the same kind of quote marketing and expectation as they do with regular commodity products like Amazon products than they do with healthcare. So if we're looking at really regulatory things, and people know that health, I'm not talking about like quaternary brain surgery, okay, but like really primary, secondary things are now really available, a lot of them now on the kind of through digital health and through telehealth channels. They're having same consumer expectation as consumer products. Yeah, so I have to think that those understanding your tool set of how do you engage with the user, whether it be a doctor, whether it be your procurement officer, whether is it a consumer or whether it's a patient. I think that those are same kind of practices and thinking that you have to use, and using pattern recognition. Of course, the last 20% mile might be different, but I think that people sometimes make it so foreign. Like, we understand that there are regulatory things that you have to do. We understand that they're more gatekeepers, but they're still humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Jasmine, I know you're someone who believes marketing should be an investment line rather than an expense line. Can you elaborate on your perspective on that?
Yes, I think there is traditionally, and I was just having this discussion even with my current company, Samsung, there are some, especially a lot of legacy companies and older traditional companies, look at marketing as really just doing awareness, brand awareness, and maybe consideration. And then sales, which is like, how do you actually get them to compare and then to purchase and renew, was like allocated to sales. But I think that more and more in the digital space, and especially in kind of digital health where I'm in, I think that marketing and the full top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, it's all the way down to the. So I always like say that marketing should, I do the kind of marketing that drive users and revenue. And if you do that, that's an investment. That has an ROI effect. That's not an expense line. It's one thing, and you know, there's wonderful, amazing advertisers and marketers who do huge campaigns. But I think that today we have a lot of analytical tools that could give you attribution to how that pays out in immediately or down, 30 days or 60-day attribution. So I think it's really important to show ROI and to say how you are making investment in the future equity of the brand or equity of the company in which you're building, so that you drive users and revenue for the short term and for long term. And I think if you position it that way, then you're making an investment. It's not some cost that's like somehow evaporates with a beautiful campaign.
Right.
I think people get really focused on the beautiful campaign. I'm really focused on how does it land?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what does it take the end user, and what does it actually, and how does your product and services scale and accelerate because of all the different tool sets that you've used in a marketing tools, arsenal.
100%. What is the most common marketing advice that you give to your clients across the board?
That's a good question. I think a couple things that I will always say. Number one, no matter how complicated something is, people generally really don't care how something is made. They care about how it's going to benefit them, how it's going to make their life easier, how that's going to solve their problem, or how it's going to enhance their thing that they're doing, or how it's going to accelerate their business. So really focus on the human and how it helps them, less on your own product and services. Of course, it's really important to say, I'm 156 megabytes and all the features, but turn it around and say, Sarah, you're going to get this because we spent the time doing AFib monitoring with these kind of diagnostic tools. Yeah. It's yesterday. So that's one. Second thing I would say is that building a long-term business with a significant equity, which actually means dollar number when you're actually selling it, acquiring it, and transitioning it. A brand equity is not some like foo-foo that we create, that it really is a long-term customer journey, not a one-time transaction. I want to be with Sarah when she's not interested in my product, just to tell her to say, hi, Sarah. Yeah, but you get a lot more credit saying hi to Sarah when you're not selling something than when you do need something. Walk next to her as much as possible, your end user, and walk in her journey and constantly be in contact with her so that you make her be part of your brand community and have her be your advocate. End of the day, really, if your and so that's the second thing, is to really walk along your customer journey. And third, what I would say is that end of the day, the job of a really good customer engagement is to make your cost of acquisition go towards zero over time. Now, it'll never go to zero, but it's a good parabola. If you could actually do your job and have the entire company focus on getting your acquisition cost down to over time over zero, then you're scaling that business. If every time you have to acquire a new customer that you're spending the same amount of money, then make it $100 business and call it a day, because your margins will be the same. The cost of scaling a business is to actually lower your step margins. And to do that, you actually need to create advocacy and brand equity. And that is actually, like, again, go back, be human-centered, walk along the entire customer or the user journey, be with them at times when you're not selling them. Just be with them, don't be a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. And I think that I've been very fortunate that I've worked on brands that have like high price value, etc., especially in healthcare services and products. But you're kind of in there for life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I love, this was super smart the way you laid this out. I love how they're all threaded together, right? The human-centered focus, building the equity, walking along with your customer across the entire journey, and moving towards zero over time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the common thread in all of those to me is really lies in kind of number two, which is you're a huge proponent of focusing deep in the funnel at that loyalty and advocacy stage, which, to your earlier point, many brands will overlook that, right? We got to the sale, we got to the conversion, and now let's go get more of, let's repeat that model and get more of those customers. But really, if you're looking to build that long-term brand and, going towards zero over time, you have to look at that loyalty and advocacy and cannot overlook it.
Yeah. And then one other thing, which is because we speak so much about innovation today, especially with AI, that the biggest area of innovation is to go to your next adjacent category. And few brands are given the latitude to do that by their customer base. And Amazon customers have allowed them to do that, from book selling to fashion to food to health. Okay. And they've actually been able to make an inroad, have an anchor, go into a market and then open up, and go into an agent's market and go open up. And that has allowed that company, that brand, to really expand and become ubiquitous and become part of every single minute of our lives. And so if you take that as an example, and I think that having that brand advocacy, and equity allows you to actually innovate and continue to diversify and scale your businesses into multiple adjacent categories. And so that's a sign of a really good portfolio brand, right? So Amazon used to be single brand, but now it's a portfolio brand that's got Amazon Cloud, Amazon Commerce, Amazon Health, Amazon what have you, right? And so I think that is a playbook that has many companies like Louis Vuitton Moda Hennessy has used. Walmart has used that. So really create that long-term equity, because we will, as a brand, like human beings, we will make mistakes and we will fumble. Because if you're innovating constantly, you're bound to make errors. But I think that if you have that brand equity, your customers actually give you permission to make errors. Yeah. To say, it's okay, we'll overlook you because you've been with me through these other things.
Right. It's I trust you, right? It goes to the importance of brand trust. And when I think about Amazon and part of what has allowed them to make these transition, it is trust. Yeah. And what led to the trust is the customer experience. That's right. It's been there day in, day out for me. I know I can click here, put in cart, and it's at my doorstep tomorrow. And if you can translate that to food or to fashion, all these other categories that I'm in, because I trust you and you've delivered that stellar customer experience. And as long as you can continue to deliver that, I'm all in for it.
Yeah. And we've used that kind of a thinking, especially when I was at Sutter Health, as an integrated healthcare system. I think that a lot of healthcares were buying up other companies and they just assumed that people are just going to believe that you could deliver that. That's a lot of hard work. Yeah. It was painful at Sutter. We got through it, but you have to really let the patient believe that not only are you going to integrate these new adjacent areas, but you're going to do it in a seamless way and still deliver the same quality of product, reliable product, and consistent service and coherent service to Sarah Payne or to Jasmine Kim over time.
Yeah. Well, another thing that's sort of related to all of this that I wanted to have you touch on is patience. And, I know you're someone who believes you need to be patient when it comes to growth and marketing's impact on growth. What advice do you have for company executives about the patience they need to have in building for the longer term with their marketing?
Really good question. patient is in really short supply, as you know.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah. I always try to turn that conversation around to the board or to the investor, to the market, and said, you know, what brand do you recall or do you remember top of your head that you've only dated once? I think it's just like human nature. Of like, if you think about, and all of us at a certain age are like, when was the last time I had multiple dates? But I think that it's like human nature. If you only meet somebody on Zoom, right, and you don't have human contact, okay, or the fact that you just traded names, but not three most important things that matter to you, or three adjectives, or had a meaningful conversation, the probability that you're going to recall that person when something comes up goes down proportionally, right? So why do we think that that's the same case of building a quote, a brand? A brand is not something that is out there talking at you. Brand is actually in your mind and it's mind space. Okay. To cut through that. So a very interesting example that we did is, and this is, a really good analogy. I remember when, of course, your companies, each person who's working in a business that they think that Sarah, the consumer, is only thinking about our product 24/7. And when I was working at Baby Center at Johnson & Johnson, of course, it's a pregnant woman. So everybody said, when I said, how many minutes do you think she spends time on our site? And everybody's like, well, she's having a baby. It's the biggest important thing in her life, 20 minutes. And what it came down to was literally less than 2 minutes. And then we created a 24-hour calendar of what she goes through in a day. So I said, how lucky are we? They were totally disappointed that we only got less than 2 minutes. And I said, actually, how lucky and privileged we are that she even thinks of us for less than 2 minutes. Because really, she's pregnant. She's working. She's just trying to get through a subway to get to work in New York City. Get me out of the way. Get my shoes on, wash my hair, do grocery shopping. And are you kidding yourself that this is what? So I think to that day, and this goes back to patient. To do that, we kind of need to be there for more than a quarter on TikTok to actually cut through the clutter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I try to make it really plain spoken because I think many times, we sit there under calculus and we think that we are the most important thing in that person's lives. And of course, higher the price point, longer the consideration rate, things like mortgages, buying houses, buying your healthcare services, longer it is and more long-term it is. And, for you to separate, it's actually more painful. Like sometimes I think I can't leave my bank because it's just too painful for me, that divorce.
Right.
But not anymore. But anyway, I think that those are all considerations, obviously. But I think that you have to at least give it 3 to 4 full buyer cycle. So, and I also think that, and I always go in the rules of threes. And I think that you need to at least invest 3 full good years or 3 full buyer cycle to have something cut through somebody's mind. Even though we think that we're the most important and we think that we spent $12 million or $100 million on a campaign, you're lucky if we have the privilege to be in our mind space for 2 minutes, that she might think of you top of mind.
Right. Yeah.
That you might pick your 17 different points in an integrated, coherent, and cohesive way that she will think, I'm going to purchase that every day, and to make it a habit.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think you're absolutely right. And I think marketing leaders may want to, share this with their executive leaders as well in terms of setting realistic expectations about the time that it takes, right?
Yeah.
To do some of this work and see the kind of impact that the organization is really looking for. I appreciate your directness. You're a truth teller, and I think that's really important, right? That we don't sugarcoat the realities of what it's going to take to see success in marketing and building a brand over time.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that I do want to say is that I think one thing that we do need to make sure is that, especially marketers with all of our analytic members, we need to actually give people ranges and expectation. I think that sometimes we get wow factors with the big, beautiful campaigns. And I know that we at Samsung are doing all this thing around Olympics, right? There's the wow factor. But I'm always about how does it land for the long haul?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want to see the entire long tail. And sometimes it's not the big wow events, it's the smaller, quieter events that hits people depending on what the brand that you represent. And I will also say in healthcare, it's the small, quiet moments that actually deliver much more profound things to a patient or to a procurement officer whose complexity of doing something, major digital health innovation in their hospital system or in their clinic is going to make a profound impact.
Yeah. And part of the small quiet and what makes that work is because the brand or the product sees them, sees their pain in that moment.
Yes.
Right. And knows them so well. They're like, yeah, that's 100% what I need. And it doesn't, to your point, have to be big and splashy. It just has to resonate on that exact pain point.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would really say that that's another thing that we really, really need to focus on, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. Well, I'd like to switch gears for a special segment we call the Collective Quickfire. I've got 5 questions for you, Jasmine. First one is name a couple of healthcare brands you think do marketing really well.
I will say Omada Health, which I'm a big fan of. And I think Amazon Health does a really amazing job.
Yeah, I think those are both really great examples.
Yeah.
Startup mentality or corporate strategy, what's more important for growth?
That's a really good question. And sorry for the slow response to rapid fire. I think a good corporate strategy is having a startup mentality.
Ooh, I love that. Hey.
Right?
It's like a trick question, and you made it not a trick question.
Because strategy is how to go about doing something. Strategy is the modus operandi. And if we set the notion that we're going to have a very entrepreneurial kind of environment or culture, whether you are an entrepreneur, a venture, or you're a large company doing intrapreneurial work, I think that's really critical. I know when I say entrepreneurial, I mean like ability to fail fast, testing new things, going into adjacent area, taking information from any adjacent area to actually try something out, and really being agile and pivoting on a dime when you need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. I think I know how you're going to answer this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's more important to you, short-term results or long-term investment in the brand?
I always will say long-term, but I know that the reality is such that you need to do both of those things. And I was telling this to my daughter that the reason we call people who are executives is because there's a thing called executive function. The executive function is our human ability to manage day to day. Could I get food in today? Will I get water today? Also, how do I actually scale the long term so that my environment and place of living is sustainable and safe? So I think that is needed for any good marketer and any good executive working today. So I would say it's kind of, we got to do both at the same time.
Yeah. I love that. What advice do you have to help marketing leaders become more decisive decision makers?
Decisive decision maker, another really good question. I would say always look at what's the risk portfolio, what's the risks, and really, really assess what the real risks are. Some of the risks are in our mind and not really logical or rational. Like literally say, what would I lose, right?
Right.
So for something as example as like asking somebody for help. This sounds really small. I mean, like compared to a lot of people don't like to ask people for help. A lot of people don't like to go to a hotel and say, do you have a better room? Like, yeah, I was like, what's the downside? You're going to be the exact same place you are in, right? Right. And
Great
so
point.
if you have a pretty good situation and like to do something, you know, and if you want to, like, I've done this in other places and most of the time I've landed in a good place. And, you know, 1 or 2 times I've actually licked my wounds, but that's those part of the course, which is that I would say, if you're not sure, try to de-risk as much as you can. So like, you know, you want to try something, have plan A and B and talk about it, or do 98% something like you always do, but have a skunk work that you're in the back closet that maybe people don't know if you're a little bit feeling vulnerable or the context of your work situations by trying that. But I think really, really assess your risk. And also if you take a risk and you land, which I feel like I've been really fortunate, you just become bigger risk takers because you're like, I've done it before. And then what's the worst that could happen? And oftentimes it's not doing things always successful. It's actually sometimes not doing them well and just getting back up and brushing your knees and just say like, okay, should we try that again?
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's not something that is out of ordinary that succeeds. It's actually doing something same over in a different way, trying in a slightly different way that actually succeeds. And people call that innovation sometimes. And so I think that really define what really risk is.
Yeah, almost repositioning it, conditioning yourself to, it's not really risk, and you're conditioned to sort of be comfortable with it over time.
And then also it really helps to have a friend or a colleague who maybe pulls you in a place that that you could actually take risk. And I always tell people every day, try to do something that makes you a little bit afraid. I don't want to say afraid, but maybe something that's maybe instead of your usual cafe latte, you try something a little different. Sometimes that's a little risk. Yeah. If you do that and you're like, oh, that was something different. I've never done Pilates before, but I'm going to try today. I might go kicking and screaming. I might never like it, but since Sarah says that she swears by it, I'm going to try it today. Yeah. I think that also helps you in what I call a constant growth mindset. Also, especially as you go on with your career and as you get wiser. I mean, people always talk about it as you age. I'm like, you're aging the minute you're born. So I said, get in line.
Yes.
So I think that hopefully we're getting wiser, and I think that means to have constant thinking of curiosity and growth mindset. And that means actually doing something that scares you a little bit or is a little riskier, however you want to define that.
Such great leadership advice. Last question, Jasmine. I know you travel a lot. Of all the healthcare conferences you attend, which is your favorite and why?
Very good question. I would say I really enjoyed VI because it's a smaller, more agile version of HIMSS. Mm-hmm. And I feel like because it's smaller and it comes in a series of there's a 5 of them all in a row, that people slow down and actually really listen and talk to each other.
Oh, I love that.
So I feel like we get more meaningful. It might be fewer, but I feel like we get more meaningful things done and we walk away with them.
Yeah.
Opposed to oh my God, I met 500 people. And you're like, how many are qualified leads?
Right.
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 And I also think that because it's in us, it comes, so that's what I really like. And I have to also put in a plug for, there's a smaller conference called Digital Health Innovation Summit. And it's an incredible melange of this completely orthogonal group of venture people, technology people, provider and payer. And even though a lot of people say, well, who's it really for? And it's there's too many mashups. I find that conference, even though it's small and they tend to be only a day and a half, 2 days, the most energizing. Because I find something that I hear in venture, I was like, oh, I could put that into healthcare. I'm like, oh, and we could think about this as a digital health. And I find that really interesting. And probably that's the way my mind works. I think that maybe somebody who's a lot more linear, that would kind of like, oh my God, it's still too wacko. But I find those conversations really interesting. And I find that the pattern recognition of innovation, that way constantly, it happens over and over, at least for me. And I find that really edifying.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this was a real pleasure today, Jasmine. I learned a lot from you. Thank you for being here. How can listeners get in touch with you?
They could reach me out on LinkedIn. I'm very, very present. And on the LinkedIn, it's got all my contact info. And I'm always happy to support a fellow traveler. I think life is very short. So I don't try to tarry and join arms with people who are going along the journey. So thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, if you enjoyed the conversation today, do us a favor and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for being part of the Health Marketing Collective, where strong leadership meets marketing excellence, because the future of healthcare depends on it. We'll see you next time.